Welcome to MFSUS Support Talk. I'm your host, Joanna Church. Over the past couple of weeks, we have been taking part in the nationwide Healthy Relationships campaign. Having healthy relationships with partners, kids, friends, and extended families can be challenging during normal years and in stationary lives. But we recognize that adding the layers of challenges, stressors, and unpredictability of military life to those relationships can make for a more complicated navigation to achieve those healthy relationships. So, to help us look into these layers a little more deeply today, we have Stephanie Adam with us, one of the counselors of the Family Information Line in Canada. Stephanie, our U.S. Outcam families welcome you into our virtual space today.
Hi, thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, it's great to have you. So before we get started, Stephanie, could you share with us a little bit about the Family Information Line and how our families can take advantage of it, even while they're on Outcan?
Yes, so we are located in Ottawa, all our counselors. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have so much more counselors on the line. So there's like 4 counselors. So first, if you call the line, someone will answer. So the thing that we do at the Family Information Line, we actually do a little bit of everything. We do have like calls sometimes just to have a phone number. Is it able to reach the Padre? What's the phone number? What's this email? What is that? But we also do crisis calls. So sometimes military members, spouse, military children, they call the line in crisis. So we're here to calm them, to talk to them, to try to rational a little bit, to find information. And we also have a program that is called ongoing emotional support. So I do have like my own clients that I talk every week or every other week, depending on what they want. So we kind of build a relationship through the phone. So it's easy with them and with the crazy schedule all over the world, because we're serving every CAF members. Even if you're posted in Europe, we still have some calls from over there. So we all have our clients that we're working with them, and we are trying to offer them the service that they need.
So that's great. I just learned something new. I didn't realize, I didn't realize, and this is my job. I'm supposed to know what you guys do. I didn't realize that you guys could actually develop sort of an ongoing contact with someone who calls. So that's really a cool service I didn't know about.
Yeah, we do, and it's not only for the military member, because there's a lot of restriction within a lot of services. So sometimes I don't even know the name of my client. She just want to call super confidential, and she can say whoever she is. Like there's like the only limit that there is, it's the age. So usually we don't start before like 15 or 16 years old, because it's not the same counseling for kids. But
Okay.
other than that, sometimes it can be parent, it can be a veteran, military member, your choice. Yeah.
I see. Well, gosh, that's wonderful. Thanks for clarifying that. So, Stephanie, we're having you here today to discuss healthy relationships.
Mhm.
So, let's just get started. Let's jump right in. You described to me healthy communication as being able to talk about anything and everything with someone. Could you
Mhm.
describe what that looks like in a healthy relationship?
Honestly, to be able to talk about everything and anything, sometimes it can be as stupid, if I can say, as like how your day went, or like, oh, I fell down the stair, or just something like that, just to be able to build a good relationship. Because sometimes there is, I don't know why, but there's a couple that they're taking kind of like the pattern of just talk about the sad thing, the important thing, like a finance, kids, school. So they don't have like the fluff around it, if I can say. So they don't have like
Sure.
the good, they don't talk about nice stuff, about funny stuff. So sometimes having like a healthy communication is also to talk about the random things in life. It's also to talk about the fun things and the sad things. So if you do have a healthy communication, if something happened at work, your husband or your spouse will be your go-to to talk to. So you know that you can always count on them. So sometimes just to make sure to have a healthy relationship is just to know that your communication is perfect. So it's to know that you have someone that will take your back, whatever is going on. They will laugh at you. They will cry with you. They will talk to you. So I do feel like if I do have a lot of clients that they're kind of like scared to annoy their spouse or their husband with issue, like, oh, he is so
Right.
busy.
Right.
But afterward, when I'm telling my client, oh, did you talk to him about it? And my client was like, oh yeah, actually he was happy to know it. So now he was actually able to know why she was sad that day.
Yeah.
Because it's when you don't have a healthy communication, it's so easy to make assumptions. And it's so, by example, if I had a really bad day at work, which, even if we're stuck at home, most of people, it's possible to have bad days.
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
you don't communicate to your husband that you had a bad day at work, and then during the evening you're a little bit more iffy, you don't want to talk, you're a little bit more grumpy, your husband can assume that he did something wrong. So he can be there for you if you don't have the healthy communication of being like, I had a really, really bad day. Like, I don't want to talk about it, or I want to talk about it, but I want you to know.
Yeah.
So this is something that I feel like if like, not bad relationship, but in healthy communication and healthy relationship, there is a lot of non-assumption, because the assumption, it's what like a big, big fight can be creating on. So without you even noticing, you can actually create a fight, and it's not even your fault. It's just because you didn't communicate how you felt. And it's the same thing if you're mad about your something that your husband did. Maybe I'm saying husband, but it can be spouse too. But maybe in his head, he's done nothing wrong. So he doesn't know if he needs to work on something, and you won't know if you need to work on something if no one tells you. So
Yeah.
for me, a healthy relationship and healthy communication, they kind of like, they go together. You need to have a good communication. Even if my honestly, my number one tip that I'm giving to my client is to eat dinner together. So stop, don't look at your phone, don't look at the TV, because it's so easy when you come
Yeah.
back from work,
So
try to
many
do like,
distractions.
exactly. As soon as you come back from work, you're doing like food, which is normal. And then if you're spending your lunchtime on the couch watching TV, afterward it's like, okay, dishes, bath for the kids, or go to bed or whatever. So you can literally spend a whole week without even talking to your husband, without having like a normal relationship, a normal conversation.
Mm.
So if you don't have that meal time that I'm using with my client, it's like you can slowly become a friend without having like that good relationship, or just like a roommate,
A
literally.
roommate. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
So that's why what I'm saying to my client is that mealtime can be like the perfect time to just switch off everything and just talk about your day, and so you guys will be on the same line. And even if there's stuff that happened at school, so you won't feel all the pressure on your shoulder, because I'm sure that the husband or the wife, they want to be involved, but they can't be involved if they don't know what's going on.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that because it's two ways. So, how do I have open and honest communication? Well, first, I have to be open and honest with myself, like,
Mm-hmm.
and what I'm going through. But then I
Mm-hmm.
also have to be willing to be open and honest when my spouse reaches out to me to be, to share what they're going through. So, it's a really
Mm-hmm.
good back and forth, which leads us into sort of the next topic we wanted to talk about today, which is vulnerable. we
Mm-hmm.
we've been
Yes.
hearing, because that is to be open and honest about everything in our lives. That's a very
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable feeling. And we've actually been hearing that word vulnerable or vulnerability used a lot right now in society and in like self-help circles. And that word is often perceived as a word that represents weakness, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we hear the word vulnerable and we just think, oh, that's just a weakness. You can't be vulnerable because that makes you weak. So,
Yes.
would you be willing to share with us what relational vulnerability is, why it isn't weak to be vulnerable, and actually why it's so important to be vulnerable?
Mm-hmm. I actually don't know why this word, like, there's such a big taboo on it, and I don't know why, because I had clients that they were like, I am not vulnerable. And then when we're talking about it, they're like, oh, actually, I am. Like, it's just like, I don't know, this word, like, it does something to it. Don't know why, but it is honestly, a lot of people, they are vulnerable without even noticing that they are. So the one of the most important thing in a relationship is to be vulnerable, because every time I do believe, and I actually talked about vulnerability with my client, with my colleague actually just before this interview, and we were talking about the fact that as soon as the relationship start, the relationship is getting to another level as soon as one in the relationship is vulnerable. So you kind of open yourself because afterward the other one is like, oh, okay, so she told me whatever happened when she was young, so she's actually able to listen to my thing afterward. So I feel like if a good relationship can be built on the vulnerability, so you know that you can talk about anything and everything with your husband and your wife, and you can actually talk about your feeling. And it's important because sometimes I feel like if you don't take the time to be vulnerable, you can feel like if you're annoying, like you're annoying your husband or your spouse, because you can feel like if, oh, I'm always sad or I'm always frustrated, and it can mix up, like we talked prior, with the communication, so he can assume about something. So as soon as there's a good vulnerability in the relationship, it's easy to know that you can always trust this person, because she was an open book with you.
Mm.
So if there is no vulnerability, the thing that can do, and I saw it like a lot with my client, it's there's a lot of barrier, like a lot and a lot and a lot. So like the couple, like they can start being that close, and then something happened and they don't talk about it, and the spouse is going one way and they're one way. So instead of talking to each other, they talk to friends, they talk to family, which is good, but they need to talk to each other, because it's just barrier and barrier. And if at one point you're not vulnerable, it's it's literally it's the easiest way to lose yourself in a relationship, and to lose the love, and to lose who you are, because as the more you're vulnerable, the more you can show how vulnerable is not either like a bad thing. It's not always being sad or being upset. It's also like to show how much you love the other person, and to
Sure.
show how much you care, and just to be there for the other person, because sometimes people are assuming, oh, you're vulnerable, you cry. It's a big taboo, I know.
Yeah,
I don't know
no,
why
I
though.
think I think being a military spouse too, sometimes being vulnerable means sharing my dreams and
Mm-hmm.
what I'd like to do for in our world, because our lives
Mm-hmm.
revolve so much around our military member and their careers and where they get sent. And so sometimes being vulnerable is just even sharing, well, here's what I'd like to do. And sometimes that can be
Mm-hmm.
a scary moment because maybe it doesn't quite fall in line with the military world, but if we're not vulnerable and bringing that forward of, hey, I've got an idea and I'd like to try this. If we never bring it forward, we can never work together to find a way to do it in our military world, because there's
Exactly.
always a way we can work together. And I also think too, what are your thoughts on with vulnerability? I think couples and partners who are able to express that vulnerability with each other become really great examples for their kids, and
Mm-hmm.
and show kids that being vulnerable within a safe family environment is healthy and good.
Yes, and honestly, I saw that the more vulnerable you are with your partner, the more trust that you build.
Yeah,
Because you
exactly. That's the
shared
word, trust.
everything with them. Exactly. You like and it's obvious. Like you can literally see it. Like you share everything with them. So even if there's like a little fight, you know that your bond is way stronger than this little fight. And it's a perfect example for kids too. So the kids, they know that it's okay for mom to be sad, and they
Yeah.
know that it's okay to say I love you. Like it's so hard. Like I've talked to like a lot of military member, and like they have an issue sometimes to just say I love you to their son, or to their, just to say I love you in general. So it's the more you're vulnerable, the more that you, for your kids, you kind of like teach them that it's okay to have feeling.
Yeah.
It's okay to be happy, but it's also okay to be frustrated. But you just need to be able to control these feelings. And it's easy also for them to create a better relationship with you, because you're kind of like, you're not always just a happy mom. Like they know that they can come and cuddle you when you're sad, because kids
Yeah,
are so smart. They can see you cry, and they're
right.
able to gauge like how you are feeling. So I feel like if the more vulnerable you are, the bigger the trust is, and it's just getting stronger and stronger and stronger.
Which sort of leads us into the other next point we were going to discuss, which is to build a healthy relationship, you need to decide to be transparent in the
Mm-hmm.
relationship, which to me just means be honest and truthful about ourselves, our feelings, our actions, what we need from each other, from our partners. So what would you add to that? What else does it mean to be transparent in your relationship?
Honestly, the first point that I can think, and I've seen that a lot in military spouse, is you kind of put yourself behind. Like you said before, they are a priority, right? Because you're being posted everywhere around the world, you're following them. And sometimes I've seen a lot of spouse that they are not saying what they would like to do, what the hobby that they love, how do they feel, just to not, you know, not to make the husband sad, but kind of just to not to disappoint him. So for me, like if I'm taking off like the honest and truthful, because you've already said them, it would be like to make sure that you stay true to yourself, to make sure that even if you're in a relationship, you don't lose who you are. And I feel like if you are transparent with you, you will be transparent in your relationship. So if you do know, like, you know what, it's fine, I will stay at home with the kids while my husband is getting posted because it's not worth it for me to find a job because I'm here only for 6 months. But I really, really want to have a studio to be able to paint. So sometimes, like, I feel like if you, like, military spouse have so much pressure on their shoulder and they're always like the number two that they need in their head to stay number one. So if in their head they are number one, they are being transparent with who they are. And if they're saying it to their husband, and there's always a word, like there's always a way to say everything. Like this is like my big motto in life. It's like you don't just go and say like, oh, I'm always moving because of you, so I want this. Like there's always a way of saying like, you know
I've
what, like
never
I'm
said
being
that.
well, there's always like a way of seeing it. So you know what, like, okay, so I'm being totally honest with you. Like I am moving here. That was not my first choice and it's okay. But if I want to keep to have like that little spirits in me and to be myself, I would like to have a studio, you know, just to be honest about what you want and what you like. And also be honest, like in your relationship about how you feel. Because I do know sometimes we do have issue to talk to someone. You don't want to make it sound bad or you want to make him more frustrated or her more frustrated. So the tip that I'm always giving to my client is to write it down. To write down how you felt, what's going on, something to work on, but you do a list and you do a list on something that you would like to work in your relationship and something you would like to work on yourself. And your husband can do the same. So when you're doing this at the end, I'm telling you, which is really weird, but most of the time it is the same thing. People like they put the same thing. So husband is like, I want to work on like communication, and the spouse is like, I want to work on like having more like conversation with you.
Communication.
So exactly. So I feel like if by being transparent, it's also not being like everything is perfect all the time
I
because
think
it's easy.
yeah, and I think
Mm-hmm.
too, like we're seeing actually an increase in female military members who then bring
Mm-hmm.
along either their female spouse or their male spouse. And I think that is a totally unique dynamic as well, and an even different pressure if you are in a same-sex marriage and you're going to another location where maybe that's not as accepted as back in
Mm-hmm.
Canada, or you're a male spouse and you're moving with your military female,
Mm-hmm.
wife, and you're the one staying at home with your kids. So those produce an even different set of opportunities to share how you're feeling, because they're unique, and that's a unique experience and something totally different
Mm-hmm.
that's going to give you another layer, as we've been talking about these layers that the military adds. Those experiences and those demographics are going to add that extra layer, which
Exactly.
means it's even more important to have that
Mm-hmm.
openness and that honesty, right?
Yes, and this is something that I've talked a lot with my clients is like everything is starting from home. So if even if like you feel pressure at work, anxiety at work, if you have a place to come after the end of your shift and you feel peaceful and you feel like if you can be yourself and you can take off that mask that you
Yeah.
wear all day, this is the basic. Because I know it's important to have a good job, good friend, good family, but if you have a healthy relationship at home, wherever you're posted and wherever you're working with, as soon as you have a place to come back, and if you add up all the layers that you said, like if you feel more anxiety at work, more pressure, if you do have like that transparent relationship and good communication, you will just be happy to come home and you will kind of have your place that you can be yourself. And that's why it
Yeah.
is so important. Mm-hmm.
Stephanie, that is such an excellent point. It's something that I talk about and I've shared with my husband that I feel like I want my home, wherever that is, whatever the house is, I want my house, my home to be this safe place
Mm-hmm.
where, when I'm in it, when he's in it, when our son's in it, that's our safe place. Doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
what's going on at work, doesn't matter the challenges, anything, anything that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
other relationships that might be struggling. In this place, we're safe. We're safe with each other,
Exactly.
and we can be that openness and vulnerable. So that's such an excellent point. I absolutely love that.
And I'm sure that you realize at one point, if you had a fight or if anyone had a fight with their partner and you're leaving, everything at work is worse because it's kind of like your safe place is not safe anymore.
That's
So
right.
that's why, like, I
Yes.
actually, at one point, I had a client that, like, it was not going well in the relationship and no one wants to work on it. Everything's fine now. But at that time, and she was like, I don't get it. Like, at work either it's not going well, and then I said, well, if you're getting up beside your partner and you're already frustrated at the beginning of your day, it's obvious that your day can't go well. Like, even if you really really try, like,
Yeah.
just the fact of how you feel in your safe place, it does have like a huge impact on everything. And that's why I always I'm like, try to notice when everything is going great at work and at home, how is it going in the rest of your world? And she's like,
Yeah.
oh, as soon as it's perfect with my husband, everything is going really well. And I'm like, well, that's exactly why it's so important to work things at home in your safe place.
Which leads right into dealing with disagreement, which I
Yes.
think this is a huge one. I really believe that learning to disagree while
Mm-hmm.
staying connected to each other is one of the hugest lessons that we can learn. I know we're still working on it in our marriage. I think it's hard. I think it's hard to maintain connection when you disagree or when you're
Mm-hmm.
having an argument, when things are stressful. But you had some tips for how do we stay connected while we're disagreeing. And so a couple of them were talk to the I,
Mm-hmm.
taking time for yourself, not letting arguments go on for too long. So talk to those 3 points for us. How can we be better at disagreeing? Because we know they're going to come. The disagreements come always.
Mm-hmm.
How do we create the safe space of connection while we're disagreeing?
It's so hard. Like, even me, I'm a social worker and I do use all this tip and sometimes it's still not working. If you're not in the mood, it's possible. But the thing that I always say, so like, not just my client, like literally my friend and my family, is to talk to the I. So this it's so simple, but it's so hard at the same time. It's to talk about how you feel. So I felt sad because I felt like if no one was listening to me, instead of saying you never listening to me. So it's saying how you feel and what you did too. Because like sometimes I know I like if you're a little bit like proud, it's hard to say like I was wrong. I was wrong. But it's important to actually be able to say that you were wrong. To be able to say like I should have done this. Like I know I should have done this and I'm sorry. But I do feel like if you don't talk to the I, the argument can escalate it so fast, and it can last forever, literally. Because if you're just like, so you didn't do the dishes, you didn't do the laundry, and then last week you didn't pick up the kids from school, and then you haven't done this. So it's just so easy. And honestly, I've been in this situation too. It's if you're being attacked. So being attacked is the way of saying, if like my husband would always say you didn't do this, after a point you don't even want to like to deal with this conversation because you just feel like if you're doing everything wrong and the conversation is not going anywhere. So I feel like if for me the tip that I'm always giving is to put emotion. So I felt sad, angry, anxious, nervous. So if you put the emotion, it's easier for your partner to actually understand how you feel. Because sometimes and honestly, when I use the I, sometimes I'm like, okay, I was not like that sad. I was just pissed that I was wrong. So it's normal and it's okay. So it's when you put feeling, you actually understand how sad you felt, how wrong you were, and it's easy for your partner too to actually be on the same level as you and being like, okay, well, I do know that you felt sad about it, but I felt sad because of that. So it's just trying to stop attacking the other one with like you, because the conversation is not going anywhere. So, and this actually, the talk to the I, it's something that I use with my friend and my family too, all the time, and it's always
This is
working
good
really
for
well.
this is good for any healthy relationship.
It is like one of my best friends. She's actually a social worker, and every time there's something, it's like I. Okay, we're good. Like it's always like this. And with your family too, it's the same. But this can always like it's going well with the take time for yourself that I said, because sometimes I know like it's okay to walk away. It's okay to be like, you know what, right now I am like that angry and I am thinking of stuff that happened a year ago. I am walking away, but not for long. That's the thing. Sometimes like there's a lot of people that they're walking away, but they're not coming back, or they're walking away for like 2 days.
Right, right.
And it's obviously not going anywhere. So for me, I always say like it's okay to take time for yourself and being like, okay, can we put this on hold? Right now I'm getting more and more frustrating, and we are kind of like losing the reason why we were on a disagreement, because it can start with like you haven't done the dishes, and finishing by you haven't picked up the kids like a month ago.
Yeah, right. Well, I
So
think
exactly.
the whole idea of talking to the I sort of brings us back to that first part about vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
When you're using I statements, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be
Yes.
open. You have to be honest about, what you're feeling. And so it sort of brings us back to that. So we have to start with those building blocks of
Yes.
we've got to be open, we have to be vulnerable, we have to be willing to say the I's. So yeah, that's a great point. Um,
And it's really hard though. Like it's one of the hardest thing in a relationship that I can say, because you have
yeah,
to literally be an open book and be,
yeah,
okay, you know what? It's been like 30 minutes that we disagree on this, and I just realized that I was wrong. And I realized that you were sad because of me, and this is not what I wanted to do.
yeah.
So that's why like it's the most important thing, and that's why I always say talk to the I and make sure to finish the disagreement the same night or the same day, to not make it last so long, because it's just adding up layers of frustration. So just by example, if like at the beginning there was like 7 tasks that your husband hasn't done in the house and you were okay with that, but then if there's one fight the next day, it will only like he will forgot one little thing, and it will be like the huge, like one of the biggest disagreement, just because it's add up, and at one
Sure.
point like your glass is full, so you're just done with it. So that's why I'm like try to always go back to like the first agreement and talk about it, and don't go to bed frustrated.
Do you have any tips on that? Let's just sort of stay on that for 1 second. Sometimes you're in the middle of a serious disagreement
Mm-hmm.
and you're not finding your way through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not figuring out how do we come together on this. We're just staying far apart. Do you have any tips? Because you can go, I mean, those arguments can go on because you're not able to find a way through it. So what are your tips for that? Like, how do you not let it go on too long when there's a serious disagreement?
Depending on what the subject is, sometimes it's let's agree to disagree, and sometimes it's does this argument is worth a relationship, and you kind of have to like go down to the basic. So to go down to like, why are we still like we are together because we obviously love each other, and we are obviously fighting because we care for each other. So it would be so easy to just leave and being like, I am done. But if you guys are still fighting, it's because you guys still want to work on stuff.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I like, this is going really far, but I'm using with my client, is to go see your values. Because if you're not raised, you guys are not raised the same way, and it's obvious. Like every couple, they come from 2 different families. So the way of seeing respect for someone and the way of seeing respect for another one, it's really not the same. So sometimes, depending on what the issue is, I'm saying to my client to try with your husband or your spouse or your partner to go back to the basic and see, okay, well, for me, that was like irrespectful. Okay, but what is irrespectful for you? Because it's not the same. It's not the same thing. So it's try to not make assumption that you guys have the same definition. And sometimes fight can go over and over and over again because of that, or because there's an issue in communication, and there's an issue with the relationship. And one of the book that I'm always saying that my client you should read with a relationship, it's called Five Love Languages. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yeah, yeah.
There's like even a military section, and the best example in that book is if you're saying to your husband that you care about him, but you're talking in French, and your husband is only talking in English, he doesn't understand.
Right.
So there's a lot of disagreement that they are on this. It's the lack of communication, and it's the lack of not understanding each other. Because sometimes you are talking to your husband, but by the time you are talking, your husband is thinking of what he will say next. So people are not listening to each other. So for me, at this point, if like it lasts for a long time, it's to go back to the basic and be like, first of all, is it worth it? And if it's like that big of a fight, obviously it's always to go like couple counseling and stuff like that. But if it's a fight that you know that can be dealt in between you guys, there's like a ton of idea. Either like write a letter of how you felt, or either just literally go both take a walk or do an activity that is not related to the fight, and just to always remind yourself that you guys love each other. And if you're fighting, it's because you're fighting for your relationship.
I think I like that. Just go back to the basics of your
Mm-hmm.
relationship, which sort of how we started the topic of disagreement was how do we stay connected while we're
Mm-hmm.
disagreeing? And maybe it's as simple as making the decision when you're disagreeing to stay connected. All right,
Exactly.
we're gonna have this conversation. We're on two separate sides of it, but what's most important is that we stay connected while we disagree. So that's an excellent point, Stephanie. Really appreciate that. Again, the book that she referenced is The Five Love Languages, and it's a well-known book and very well recommended. My husband and I went through that book, and it really
Oh
did,
yes.
yeah, it really did help us like figure out those differences that we were
Mm-hmm.
that we were experiencing with each other. So I agree with you. It's a great book and highly recommended.
Yes, and there's a military edition too, which is
Oh,
really
I didn't even know that. So there you go.
yeah. So like the little story and example in the book, it can be related to like posting and deployment and stuff like that. So it's really nice. Like I've read it, and I asked actually my friend to read it too, because I'm like, I want to know what's your love languages. So when I'm saying to you like, oh, you're a good friend, do you really understand what I mean? Because I am
Right.
word of wisdom. So for me, this is like the perfect way. But for it was like, yeah, no, for me, to understand that I am a really good friend, it was been to go eat together one night. And I'm like, okay, now we are talking the same language.
We
So
could
it's
do
not just
that.
for exactly. So it's just to be more aware. And it's with this, it's easy to go back to the basic when you actually know the language of your husband or your spouse.
That's awesome. Yeah. Great point. And I'm glad to find out that they made a military version of it. That's really
Yes,
cool.
they
So
did.
So you had shared a few points on keeping connected with your partner, and I believe that is so important. Um, if we can master staying connected with our partner, it will just help us come through those disagreements and arguments we just
Mm-hmm.
talked about. So I think that's so important. But I think that the military family life really presents a unique set of challenges for families when it comes to staying connected because we have deployments, we have temporary duty assignments, courses. If you're in the United States or Europe, you've got swing shifts that are really hard on a family life. Sometimes our members are in locations where they can't have their cell phones with them at work. So you can't even send those fun, flirty texts to each other during the day.
Mm-hmm.
So not being the other thing is that sometimes they're not able to share their job, right? They come home and I'm like, I can't talk about it. It's top secret, and so you don't even have that ability to talk about how their day went in certain aspects, whereas I can share every part of my job. So you had shared a few points on, okay, how do we keep connected, spending time together, reminding each other why we chose each other, being spontaneous. Can you help us put these ideas of staying connected in context when we're dealing with this relationship, this military relationship that has these extra layers and extra challenges that I just mentioned?
For sure. So if I'm taking like the first section, like the spending time together, there's always two way of seeing it. There's always the way of my husband is gone for 6 months or my husband is home for 6 months. So
Mm.
there's always
Perspective.
that way. So exactly, the perspective is really different. So it's trying to make the best out of it. So during these 6 months or weeks that he is with you, trying to literally spend all your time just enjoying the time, to just try to actually build inside joke and build memory that when he will be gone, even if it's literally a joke about a TV show, as soon, even if he is gone and you just like scroll on Netflix and you see this TV show, it would be kind of like an inside joke with your husband that he is not there, but you guys build a memory around it. Because
Mm.
I had a lot of clients that they literally spend 4 of the 6 months crying about the fact that he will leave for 6 months.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's why I'm like, at this point, you know that it will happen. I
Yeah.
know like it's sad, but it will happen, and you can deal with it when it will be a little bit closer. So for the rest of the time, trying to build good memory, trying go do some photo shoot, go take pictures with your husband, go do even if it's like try to build a new routine for when he will not be home, and trying to maybe take him off of the routine a little bit more so it will not be that big of a shock and he will be there to help you out. So this is something that for me, I think trying to make the best out of it and use your time wisely. So try to make good activity and just to build that good relationship for the 6 months. So when he will leave, your trust will be so like huge in the relationship that you will not be that anxious or that sad. And
Right.
it's the same thing for me, like being spontaneous. I know that it can be hard, but I actually had a lot of military spouse that they receive like letters from their husband, and the husband never sent letters. So it's little like activity like this, or the husband ask a friend to go drop the gift out on the porch and stuff like that. So just to try to take the same little attention that you would do at home, but you have to work around it and use your creativity a little bit more. I know it's hard, and sometimes I'm not saying to like send a letter every week. This is not what I'm saying, but I'm saying to you, if you're taking little attention here and there, so your spouse will is feeling loved and she's not feeling by herself, it's building up a better relationship. So you're sending a
Yeah.
letter literally help her to go through like another 2 months.
So old school. You're saying we need to go old school.
Yes.
I would say the same, right, with text messages. So your spouse goes to a job where they have to lock their cell phone up every day. So you can't be
Mm-hmm.
that spouse who sends those fun, flirty messages via text. Well, you could, slip a little handwritten note into their pants pocket before they leave, or into their, if you pack lunches, you can pop it into their packed lunch, put it in their car seat. So definitely there's some other fun old school ways that you can
Yes.
have sort of that still flirtatious, relationship.
For me, it's kind of like to break the routine a little bit. So if during like the if like your husband, your partner, I'm sorry, is getting like posted for like 6 months, the 6 months that he is with you and he's working here, try to break the routine. Try to do like quick activity, little date, because it's so easy to, create a barrier. So I do know, like I have a lot of clients, and this is the issue, is that there was barrier before the partner was posted. So
Right.
when he is posted, the barrier is just getting like more and more like hard because you can't really communicate as good. So this is what I always say like to my client that their husband or wife is getting posted is this 6 months make the best out of it and try to make like the better your relationship as better every day. And this is so
Mm.
important. So your trust, like for him, even if he doesn't text you for like 2 days, you'll be like, oh, he was busy. But if you're taking like a spouse that her husband, they don't have a good relationship, a good communication, and the husband doesn't text her for like 2 days, it's like he doesn't love me anymore, and it's just like so much anxiety.
Spirals.
Exactly, because having your husband posted in another country, it's one anxiety, and then not having any news, it's another anxiety. But not blindly trust him, it's like a huge anxiety that it's easy to go spiral and to get so anxious.
Yeah. Well, I think that everything that we're sort of talking about in terms of building that healthy relationship while you're together is what's going to help us when our separation times come, right? And that's what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying is like, be focused on building those positive, those open, those healthy times when you're together so that you don't go into deployments. And we've all been there. I'm no exception. We have gone into times of separation where they call it the cycle of deployment, right? Where right
Mm-hmm.
before for some reason, right before they leave, that's when the fights happen, right?
Exactly.
Because of the anxiety we feel and all of those things. But if we've spent all that good time, loving each other, building each other up, being open and vulnerable with each other, it really is going to make that deployment, that time apart, that course, even if it's just 2 weeks, whatever, it'll make that time better, stronger, and healthier.
Yes, exactly. Because if you don't have any news from your partner during that time, it will not be an add-on to the argument that you had prior.
That's
It
right.
will just be like, okay, you know what? Busy day. I was busy too. We're good.
Yes.
Next. But if like there's already like a disagreement or a fight, the little thing that he will not do or she will not do will just like add on, and it's not healthy at all for the spouse that is home.
Or the spouse that's away, honestly. I think for both, I think that can
Yes.
really go both ways, right? Because there's a lot of anxiety for the member who is out and about and not home
Mm-hmm.
and wondering what's going on at home and how are things happening at
Right.
home. So it for sure can go both ways. Which brings us into one of the ideas that you had shared with me that I really liked was doing mental health check-ins between
Mm-hmm.
partners to make sure everyone is good, and if not, to make sure that we're there for each other to support the partner who's in need of it. So, Stephanie, what does that look like? What does a mental health check-in look like? Or could you describe maybe how we would go about doing that in a safe and effective way with our partners?
Yeah, so usually when I'm saying I'm telling my client that they should do a mental health check-in, the first thing that I'm doing is before doing it, ask your partner, are you open to have a conversation? Because if you're about to say how you feel and you're about to like even if it's not related to your husband at all, just like mentally how you feel, if he or she is not ready to have a conversation or they're just like tired or they didn't had a good day, which is perfectly fine, it's better for you to ask them prior than being disappointed in the conversation. Because if you're looking to have support and your partner had like an awful day, he will not give you that support. So it's okay to be like, you know what, I really want to be there for you, but today I can't even be there for myself. So I will just take a step back. I'm going to go take a bath, take a walk, and I'll make sure to be there for you. Because the mental chicken, honestly, the thing that I'm always telling like to my client, and I actually use it like often with my husband, it's to always make sure that everything's okay and always make sure that you don't lose yourself in the loop of life. Because we do know in 2020, it's so easy to be like, oh, we're Monday, boom, next thing you know, we're Friday. And you
It's so
haven't take,
true.
I know, and working from home, it's even worse because you're
Yeah.
so like in your thing. So sometimes the mental check-in, it can be you. I'm always saying you don't have to wait until you're not feeling good to do the mental check-in. I had clients that they've been waiting until like their husband haven't slept for like weeks before doing that mental check-in. But I'm always saying like every other week or once a month or every week, depending on your relationship, just to like at mealtime or while you guys are cooking or taking a walk, just to have that conversation of like, how do you feel? How do you feel about this? What's going on, like, oh, or I can see that like lately you've been more frustrated like with work, or you've been a little bit more like on the edge, or it's kind of like walking on eggshell. Is there something that I can do to help you? And not there's a way of bringing it up, because it would be really really easy to be like, why are you always so mean with me, and
Right,
why are you
right.
always talking to me? So just being like, the mental check-in can also be used to work on your partnership with your partner. So you can use it of being like, I can see that right now we are kind of like walking on eggshell and I really want to help. Tell me how I can be there for you. Or I can see that lately you've been really happy. Like, what's going on? I want to be happy too. Like, tell me, like, is there something that I've done that made you feel happy? And
Ooh,
sometimes it can be like small thing about like, oh,
no. Yeah, I love that because what you're
yes,
saying is we always think of mental health check-in as negative.
Oh
But
no.
what a great
Yeah.
point you just made. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it was such a great point. I'm
No.
like, oh my gosh, like, why not do mental health check-ins when you see the positive, when you see the happy, and say, what are you
Hmm.
doing that's making you so happy? Because I want in on that. I love that. What a
And the thing
great
that I'm
idea.
doing with my husband, don't tell him it's a secret, but I'm taking notes. So if he's like, you know what, like I've seen my friends and like we play with our dog and I learned like she learned new trick and like we've done this and like it just made me feel so happy. I'm taking notes so when he's not feeling that good, I can use these points. Because I do feel like if you're waiting until he is not like your partner is not feeling well, it's kind of like a little bit too late because now like even if you want to help him out, like it's been a while that he is not like feeling well. So that's why I'm always doing like these check-in, like even when he like my partner is happy. And for me, like it's so important because I feel like if we're putting so much focus on like, oh, you were grumpy today or you were sad today, like so that's why sometimes I'm like, why are you so excited? Like what's going
Yeah.
on? Like so it's just mental health check-in can be good. It can
Yeah.
be good thing, you know, like, oh, like I am so excited that we are going to see friends and I'm so excited that we are doing this, or like, oh, I tried a new recipe and it was so good. So it's easy. I feel like if you should build a better relationship with your partner during these happy mental health check-in.
I love that. I think that's such a positive way to look at it. I can see like doing that as totally changing a dynamic in a relationship. You know,
Yes,
that the check-ins are that are more frequent are the ones where why are you so happy? What's going on? Why are you so excited? I love that so
exactly.
much.
And I actually I gave this tip to my client with her teenager and with her daughter too, because you know sometimes it's so well, I'm talking for myself right now, but I don't like when people are just caring about me when I don't feel good. Because I'm like, why do I have to be sad for you to ask me how I'm doing?
Yes, yeah, that's so
So
true.
yes, and I feel like if sometimes like with teenagers, we do have a tendency to do this, like, oh, you were so rude, or why you haven't done this. So I feel like if when you're doing like these happy like mental health check-in, it's kind of like, oh, like I can see that you're happy right now. Like, what's going on? I want to be happy with you. So you're starting to build a relationship and some communication skills over happy thought instead of over like sad thought. Like I'm sure like every parents can see them. There's always like one in the couple that is having like the hard conversation, the sad conversation. It's either the mom or the dad most of the time. Like sometimes they're doing it together, but frequently, usually it's like the dad is doing this conversation with his son and the mom with her daughter. Like most of the time that's what my client are doing. But that's at this point I'm like, you want to make sure that your daughter doesn't associate you with only bad stuff and sad
Right.
stuff. So if you're always just doing your mental health check-in when she's not feeling bad, she will feel like if she needs to be bad, like to feel sad to have your attention. So that's why I'm like, these happy check-in, I know like it can be like it looks a lot doing it like once a week, but like when you're doing it like over a meal, it's so easy. It's literally a conversation starter.
Right. No, I think that's a great idea. And as you said, it's not just good for partner relationships, but friend relationships, teen
Mm-hmm.
relationships, even little kid relationships. Kids know,
Mm-hmm.
they might use simpler words, but little kids can tell you how they're feeling, good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
You had used the phrase, it's okay to not be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess in this conversation, it's also all right to say, it's okay to be okay.
Yes.
Uh, it's okay to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an awesome and really positive spin on the mental health check-in that we can be doing with each other. And how important this year is it to be doing those
I
check-ins
was
with each
I was
other?
about to say that because I feel like if at one point, like, everyone had their own stage with the pandemic, like how they felt, and it's normal. But I do feel like if at one point when I was feeling really, really good, I felt bad to be like,
Felt
oh,
guilty?
I'm happy. There's a global pandemic, but I'm happy. But
Mm,
on the other hand, I'm like, it's not because social media and at work and friends, like they're always talking about this in a negative way, that you can make the best out of it. So that's why I'm like, it's okay to not be okay with the pandemic and with what's going on in the world, but it's also okay to be like, this is going on. I know it's going on. I wear my mask. I am aware of everything, but I still have the right to be happy and to do stuff that I do like and to do stuff that I
yeah.
enjoy.
So good. Like, I can still choose joy in the
Yes.
middle of a pandemic.
I know it's crazy to say, but I'm like, even if you're just home and crying and being anxious, you, I feel like if this is more sad than feeling guilty of being happy. That's the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. And we don't want that.
No, no,
There's
exactly.
no right emotion as we go through these things.
There is no at all, but it's the same thing like in the relationship. So like it's okay to actually like, oh, you know what, like I don't feel good today, and it's perfectly fine, but it's also okay to be like, oh my god, I want to go run and I am so excited and let's go stuff. And I'm telling you that if you do have like a super good day and your husband is having like a iffy day, you will literally make him happy by him seeing you happy. So if you do have
Yeah.
like a healthy communication and healthy relationship, you can spread that joy.
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's everybody make the choice. Let's spread some joy in our
I
world
agree.
today. I think we need more of that for sure.
We do.
Well, as we wrap up today, Stephanie, if someone is looking for resources to help their relationships, and the Healthy Relationship Campaign is about any type of healthy relationship, we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
with your spouse, with your intimate partner, with your kids, with your friends, with your extended family back home, which there's a lot of strained relationships with extended families right now. And in particular, the gender based violence that we have seen that has been spreading, especially during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody is feeling those things or experiencing those challenges in their relationships, where can they start with what's available to them through the Canadian Armed Forces or through CFMWS, FIL? What would you recommend for people to just get started?
So actually, to get started, I will recommend them to call a file, the Family Information Line, because it's not because we do offer ongoing emotional support that it's the only option that we are giving you. So just by example, we are all social workers, but I do have like clients that sometimes they call and they want to have couple counseling, or they want to have, to be able to have a diagnostic and to have a prescription at the end, or different type of counseling that they are looking for. So we are listening to what the client want, and we're trying to find the best match, because there is CIFMAP, so it's called Canadian Forces Member Assistance Program, that you can call over there and you can have a diagnostic. But there's also other services. I do know that on CAF Connection, there's a new section that is called supports available to you for a healthy relationship, and there is a lot. And
Yeah.
if you really just want to have like a conversation just by yourself, ongoing emotional support, you can stay at the Family Information Line. And it's also possible to have like both. So you can be with CIFMAP and you can be with us, because in CIFMAP sometimes depending where you're located, they do offer couple counseling. So you can take couple counseling and have counseling on your side to work on yourself, because to have a good relationship, both person involved, they need to work on themselves at the same time. And depending on where you're located, if you call the Family Information Line, we will be able to match you with the better service that you like. We will be able to give you all the phone numbers. You call whoever you want, because I did have like a lot of people that they call and they assume that if they're calling to have like to talk to someone, I will just put them on my list and not giving them all of the other options. But if you want to start somewhere, I would call us and we will be able to give you all the phone numbers that you need and just answer your question.
I think one of the points you did make earlier that I just want to highlight is that if you do call the Family Information Line, you don't even have to give your name. I
No.
know there's a lot of people who are worried about that, or they're worried about the confidentiality, but you don't have to give your name no matter how many times you call. You can always be anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
So, just a reminder to everyone that the Family Information Line is a fully confidential, bilingual, 24/7, 365 days a year phone line that you can call that are staffed with bilingual certified counselors. So I would just encourage you, never hesitate to reach out to them. If they can't help you, they will work to find the resources that can help you. And we are so thankful, Stephanie, for you joining us today. I think that if somebody calls the family information line and they hear your voice, now they even get a face to put to their voice. So we
Exactly.
so we really appreciate you coming and just sort of sharing your thoughts with us today on how we can build better, healthy relationships, even while we might be posted somewhere else in the world. And the family information line for anyone who wants to call is 1-800-866 4546. So thank you for joining us today, Stephanie. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.